Um, I hope everyone is doing well. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mrs. Santiago.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Please join me for a moment of silence as we think of our entire Newburgh School family. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Clark.
Ms. Burton,
Here.
Dr. Henderson,
Here.
Mr. Howard,
Here.
Mr. Levenstein,
Here.
Ms. Meda,
Here.
Ms. Mineo,
Here.
Ms. Santiago,
Here.
Mr. Stridiron,
Here.
Mr. Walker.
We're going to start off tonight with our 2020-2021 contracts for excellence.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, will you be able to present the PowerPoint?
Yeah, Mr. Durante can pull it up right here.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, Board of Ed members and Newburgh community. This is a public hearing on our contract for excellence for the 2021 school year. This will be available for public comment for 30 days, and any individual seeking more information about this or wanting to participate in the public comment may send me an email, and there's also additional information on our website. Next slide. Okay, so the New York, no, that's one slide up, please. The New York, thank you. Contract for Excellence is an initiative started by New York State that have started as early from 2007 to 2008. And this initiative is taking a portion of the state aid and making sure that you're distributing it to schools in need with the following specific program areas listed here. The Newburgh Enlarged City School District has taken an additional focus on time on task, which means dedicating instructional time and dedicated blocks to content area. Additionally, we have a focus on high school and middle school restructuring, teacher and principal quality, our pre-K program, and our L programs. Next slide, please. I apologize, I can't control the slides. I probably should just, okay. Thank you. Okay. District leaders and SL and school building leaders come together to create building level growth plans and where they assess the data in order to create needs assessments and goals for their individual schools. Next slide, please. Our current school performance data you can see listed there are our schools in good standing, our TSI schools, which are our schools are targeted support and improvement, and our CSI schools are our schools that are comprehensive support and improvement needs schools, which is Vales Gate, Seam Academy, and South Middle School. Next slide, please. Okay. Just want to note that this is not new funding to the district. This has not been new funding to the district. It's just how are we allocating a percentage of our foundational aid. This aid for the contracts for excellence has remained flat for more than 3 years now. However, we still need to let the state know and the public know how we're allocating towards these different initiatives that I stated earlier. One focus also that we dedicate this money to is our newcomer language labs, also to support our AIS supplemental math and ELA through, and also our instructional technology facilitators. With our instructional technology facilitators, we're able to support grades really pre-K through 12 to help to make targeted instructional decisions using technology. And we also are able to dedicate money towards our evening campus for overage and undercredited high school students. Okay. Right. Curriculum and instruction is also having a focus on creating common interim assessments as well as content level maps. We have a focus in our new learner students and our ENL as our ENL enrollment increases. And our pre-K, universal pre-K grant does not fund the program 100%. So we do take some of our foundational aid in order to support those full day programs. Okay. And the next slide shows the allotment towards each of the buildings. And we have to use a formula in which we measure against our student enrollment, our poverty, our disability, our Ls, and our improvement status. And that concludes our public slides on the contract for excellence.
Board members, any questions or comments? Thank you, Dr. Spindler.
Thank you very much.
We're going to move on to executive session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose. Matter made confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, the review and program and placement of students with disabilities, collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, NTA, the proposed acquisition or sale of real property, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Miss Maida,
Yes.
Miss Mineo,
Yes.
Miss Santiago, Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Miss Burton.
Yes.
Thank you. We will return in a short while. Thank you.
Matthew.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I thought I was in freeze. Okay.
Madam President, you're all set. I've started the recording back up.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Badia.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening, everyone who is joining us tonight. Before we start, we just want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, a safe and relaxing one. We have two items, two presentations for tonight. 3.1 is an update on Operation Reopen, and I will share my screen in 1 second. Okay, so this is a Tuesday, November 24th edition of Operation Reopen. And so we do have a couple of key updates for the board and the community. I'm going to cover 6 items tonight, and they're right for you. So this past week, the governor's office did contact the district and several of the community representatives to inform us that our school district is in fact now in the yellow zone. And as you can see by the map that's highlighted in yellow, it pretty much covers the entire district. with the exception of 2 schools, and that is the Bombville School and Fostertown School. Now, that's pretty important because that means the rest of our school district is in the yellow zone, and there are certain requirements that are part of being in the yellow zone, which mean, well, testing in this case. And as you can see from orange and red, you see a breakdown in percentages and ultimately some of the requirements for schools that find themselves in any of these particular zones. I want to highlight just a little bit more about the yellow zone. So in this case, because starting on Monday, November 30th, we will not have in-person student instruction. We are not required to test. And I know my team and I have gotten a number of inquiries this week because obviously this is new and very understandable that why people would be inquiring as to testing protocols, who has to test, and the logistics behind the testing. And I'm going to get into that later in the presentation. But as of right now, we will not be testing. When students come back in January, if we are still in this case, the yellow zone, we will begin testing at that point. So we do have time to learn, prepare, put an operational system in place for in the event we stay in the zones, we'll then begin the procedures for testing. This is just a quick snapshot as to what the rates look like across New York State. Now, Governor Cuomo has gotten on several times this week alone, emphasizing the concern, specifically a lot of his concern had to do with Western New York because Western New York are starting to see some very high numbers that they didn't see in the spring. In the spring, it was predominantly New York City, Long Island, and Hudson Valley were sort of the hot spots. Now you're starting to see a trend of Western New York starting to see some very high numbers, but it's not just Western New York in this case. As you look at the Hudson Valley, you're seeing some pretty high numbers there. Obviously, our concern and attention is our community. And, you know, this is a concern for us. If this does not start to go down, you know, there is a belief that we will find ourselves in the orange and red zone shortly if we don't start to see people in the community adhering to these safety protocols. And that's the only way we're going to truly mitigate and kill the spread of COVID, is that people need to practice the 3 W's: washing your hands, wearing your mask, and watching your distance. Also pretty critical this past week was a very strong letter from our county commissioner of health advising school districts in Orange County to pivot to remote instruction for students. And Newburgh did heed that advice. And again, I'll just publicly share what I've already indicated in my communication to the community and family, that beginning November 30th through January 16th, right before MLK Day, students, in fact, will go fully remote. Now, because testing is new, I want to draw attention to this rapid test that many districts across the state either have already begun using or are considering to use. Now, because we fall in the yellow zone, and if we had students that were getting in-person instruction, we would have to begin the process of testing. And as a result of being in the yellow zone, these tests should be, and what we've been told by the governor's office is that these tests would be free. So our 2-week clock started yesterday. So we had in-person instruction yesterday. We had in-person instruction today. And then we won't have in-person instruction again until January 19th. So if we play this out a little bit, if we are still in the yellow zone on January 19th, that's day 3 of in-person instruction. And then we will, in fact, begin the process of testing students, faculty, and staff. Again, this is all brand new. So we are collaborating with other districts. Our school health facilitator visited a site today to see the testing live, so that way she could get a better understanding of the process. We're going to be engaging individuals in training modules, again, in preparation for testing to begin. So I want to click this video so that way the board and our community can see, as it relates to this rapid test, the process that would entail. So hopefully you can hear this.
Put 6 drops in the top hole. And it's important to keep this flat so that the liquid doesn't go anywhere else. And then you take the nasal swab, which looks very much like a Q-tip, the soft cotton tip there. And then you insert it into each nostril. You can swirl it around a little bit, but you want to go just enough that you feel a little bit of resistance. Take it out. The other nostril, same idea. 3 to 4 seconds. And then you insert it into the bottom hole of the 2 in this kit. And then you turn it several times so that the specimen can mix with the liquid that you've just put in. And then you take this adhesive strip here off, just peel it off like that, which allows you to fold this closed until it stays closed. And then you wait 15 minutes for the result to come back. And on that card, there are lines that will show the result in 15 minutes. It's important not to interpret the result too early because it won't be accurate. So you have to wait a good 15 minutes. That blue control line will go away as the liquid goes up that little piece of paper there in the kit. And what ends up will either look like 2 lines there on the left, which is a positive result, or only 1 line on the right, which would be a negative result.
Okay. See how I can get back to my presentation here. Give me a second. Okay, so maybe the board wants to do a demonstration video for the community or not. I was just trying to look, I was reading some of your faces. But right now, this is pretty much the test that would be free that districts would be using. And we put a couple of bullets here for you of why it's cheaper. They consider it reliable and affordable, but not as reliable as going and taking a test in a lab. So while it is a test that is predominantly going to be used for school districts across the state, it's not as reliable as going into the lab and getting a test that way. So there are some critical conversations taking place across the state as it relates to athletics. Just a quick reminder, for low-risk sports, the start date was supposed to be November 30th. That's this upcoming Monday. High-risk sports, there hasn't been a decision just yet. And again, that's something that each of the sections are considering. Given that Orange County, which is part of Section 9, has pushed back student instruction, in-person student instruction, past November 30th, that would pose an issue for our county. So as of right now, there is a vote that is going to take place tomorrow, and this is the Section 9 Athletic Council. They will be voting as to whether or not Section 9 will delay the start of winter sports. And again, the dates that are being considered: November 30th, either keeping it there, moving it to January 4th, or moving it to January 19th. Newburgh's position on this right now is that if our students are not in person, then we are advising our athletic director that we are going to hold off until the point students are back. And again, that's January 19th. But because Section 9 runs across several counties, this has to be a multi-county decision that needs to be made, and we'll find out the results of that voting tomorrow. And again, that's tomorrow at 9:30, that vote's going to take place. So I just want to spend a little time about the transition and just say to our community, we hear you, we understand you. If you are frustrated that children are not in classrooms learning, we hear you. We understand where your frustration is coming from. And again, I applaud our employees for adhering to the protocols and making sure that our schools and our classrooms are safe for everyone, including students. However, we are following the advice and recommendation of our health commissioner. And so consequently, our students won't be returning for in-person instruction until January 19th. So we're calling that transition, remote transition 1.0. So during the time of November 30th through January 15th, which is a Friday, students will receive synchronous live instruction. Once we finish this transition, we will move right into phase 4. Phase 4 will begin January 19th, and for every 8th grader, 11th grader, and 12th grader, you have not had a chance to have any form of in-person instruction so far this year. And I know you've been wanting to get back all along. Well, this will be your first opportunity to come back to in-person hybrid instruction. Your principals will be providing you information to let you know what cohort you're going to be a part of. There are 2 cohorts, blue and gold. The blue cohort goes to school on Monday and Tuesday. The gold cohort goes to school on Thursday and Friday. And this new piece of information here is just another example of how the Newburgh School District is shouldering up. We were on a very interesting and exciting Zoom today, where our district, in collaboration with the CDC, Fatima, the United States Department of Education, and FEMA, to support the U.S. Virgin Islands in their reopening of schools and transitioning students to in-person or remote instruction. So again, I give all the kudos to our board, to our teachers, our administrators, and to our families who have shown the utmost flexibility and patience since March. It's good to know that we're being tapped to help another district, or in this case, another U.S. territory in their decision-making, learning from what we were able to do, both where we struggled and what we were able to do in the form of a best practice. So I want to share that with the board this evening and the community, that the Newburgh School District, in partnership with these organizations, will be working with the U.S. Virgin Islands and supporting their transition. And then lastly, this is a consistent slide that just stays up there. It's just a visual reminder that we all have to mask up. Madam President, that concludes this presentation.
Board members, any questions or comments on this part of the presentation? Mr. Stradine, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. So as far as the situation where we're going to have all the students at home starting November 30th, what's the impetus? What's the purpose of having the teachers in the school until January 16th?
There are a number of reasons. One, there are many teachers that want to be in schools and working from their classrooms. And we will continue, as we have previously indicated, continue to monitor and ensure the students are getting quality instruction, ensuring that our employees have the tools and resources in order to effectively provide instruction, whether that's from home or from their classroom.
Mr. Levinstein, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. So firstly, I would also like to offer kudos for being recognized as a district that can help others in their decision-making process, and all the work that went in by all the people. Thank you. I do have a comment on the tests. I'm just wondering if the state is offered much guidance or recommendations, because the logistics of doing that test for 20%, when students and teachers are coming back in January, to 20% of all the students every day seems like a time-consuming task and would really cut into hours of the day for people.
Yeah, I certainly hear you. I'm not quite sure I'm in a place right now where I can provide more information regarding the test because it's absolutely brand new to us. We will engage in some training modules to better understand the test itself and the various logistical components that we would have to put in place. I'm hoping maybe in December, if not early January, we have much more information, have a plan in place to facilitate this. But again, it's brand new, so I'm not really in a place right now because I'm still learning myself. We did have a conversation with the Deputy Secretary in the Governor's office, as well as Orange County Department of Health and their team. And we have a follow-up for next week for that meeting, and that is specifically and focused on testing. So I'm guessing at that point we'll have more information around the logistics and a little bit more about the exam itself.
Thank you.
Mr. Stradern, I see you have another question.
Thank you, Madam President. I do have a concern about the January where we're bringing back everybody at once. I broke down the numbers based on the COVID letters that were sent home and the timing in each school. And in the beginning of the school year, we virtually had no cases at all. Once phase 2 was implemented, the cases are about 20 cases. Once phase 3 was implemented until this point today, the number of cases tripled. I'm very concerned that if you bring back in January everybody at once, that there is going to be another ramp up in cases. Is there anything that you can say that you will do ahead of that to assure the community that the ramp up in cases will not be the same as what we've witnessed in the last few months?
Yeah, so I think it's important to note, provide some context to those numbers. So first phase, we were fully remote, and therefore we didn't have many teachers. There were some that still came in, but no students. There are a lot of cases, positive cases, of individuals who've never even stepped foot in the building. And so we wouldn't be bringing them all back at once either. They would be coming back in a hybrid model. And there is still a possibility that, even on January 19th, there's still a significant, close to 55 to 60% of students who still wouldn't even come in. So that number is dramatically reduced just because we're still in the first semester. So January 19th, we're not bringing back all students. We're probably around 45% of students in a hybrid model. So that number is dramatically reduced. Now, the second semester, in the event we don't offer a remote model for the second semester, then yes, at that point, we would see more students coming in. But again, there's a lot still needs to take place from now until that point. There's lots of talks of vaccines. Again, our procedures and protocols for mitigating the spread appear to be working. Our issue is not positivity rates, it's our ability via quarantines to staff our buildings.
You mentioned quarantines, and my concern is if you continue to have the staff, like if anybody who could do work at home, if you allow them, if they want to be able to work from home, you will lower the density of the individuals in the buildings, and you will get the spacing and you'll have better air quality in the buildings. You have less people. Is there a chance that, because I know you're going to allow, I believe next week, some staff to choose to work from home. Is that the case?
Yeah, so some teachers predominantly will have the choice next week. But I want to capture what you're saying because it's really important. And we share the same concern. My entire team does. Right now, even with the numbers that we have, and again, a predominant, most of our children are home. They're fully remote. We're seeing classrooms with one student, with two students in them all day long. And we also know we have families who want their children back. We have educators who want children back in person. And this is going to just be a continuous monitoring of data to see from a health perspective what will work. So, we'll continue to provide these updates. We'll continue to, give insight into the decisions that are being made. And, as I indicated in the letter to families, we want to have an in-person distant hybrid model. But at this point, we're following the health advice and transitioning students remotely. On January 19th, we will transition to a hybrid model that will reflect what we had for the first semester.
In light of the number of cases rising and the possibility of being in the orange zone maybe within a week, and the number of the hundreds of quarantine people we have in our district, I would like to make a motion that we extend your provision to have the staff that can work from home, that want to work from home, extend that to January 16th. I make that motion.
Well,
Mr. McCoy, I need help with that one.
I'm going to have to turn that one over to the school lawyer, ma'am.
Yeah, this wouldn't be the part of the agenda for that motion.
So
That could be made at a later time on the agenda, and you would need consent by a majority of the board members to add it to the agenda.
So Mr. Stridiron, make that motion during my section, and then we can make a motion to add, okay?
Well, the topic is Operation Reopen. So I'm actually on topic. I don't understand why there's been
because it's a presentation now. It isn't an action part of the agenda. That's my opinion.
Okay, because we've had over the last 6 years, people make motions during topic agendas and it's been accepted. But I'll bring it up at another, number 5.
Yeah, I'll just add that I'm not quite sure there needs to, in just my opinion, I don't see why there's a need for a motion to extend the decision that I'm making when I've already indicated that is something that I'm monitoring and will be informing the community and the board of the district status throughout.
Does any other board member have any questions or comments on this section on Operation Reopen?
I do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walker. I can't see you at this point, so would you
I
like?
know
to
I
put
can't
your camera on?
figure that out, but I'll make it fast. I'm concerned about using our best teachable moments for our students, who are, many of whom may be stressed out or whatever. And I'm just wondering if, number one, when there's a break during the Christmas holiday or whatever you want to call it, if they'll be able to contact the board, or will there be something up that the board can have that we can kind of encourage our children to work, maybe teach them relaxation exercises, talk to them, thank them, after each class for doing the best they can to get here, and just keep teaching them and letting them know that we are all in this together and that it is a very difficult time on a daily basis, I think, for many of our children to hear this type of message. That's all. Done.
Mr. Howard, you have your hand up?
Yes, Madam President. So I hear where my colleague is going with that. So I guess my question would be, what role and what capacity are the SCL teams monitoring our student population? And is there an opportunity, as Mr. Walker has stated, if a child is going through an episode or an event, is there a contact number that they can call the SCL portion of their building, or anything that if something like this arises? Because the social emotional aspect of children are coming under pressure right now, and it's even affecting adults. So that's a great question. So I guess my question is, what role are the SCL teams playing in this area?
Dr. Roman, you want to take that one?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, Mr. Howard. So what I can share with you under student support services, we're going to be engaging in an SEL screener to help identify, and this is a screener for students, to help identify areas that we can support students in their social emotional well-being. And so that's something that we're currently undergoing in terms of implementation. The PPS staff is they have been engaging with students, our social workers, our psychologists, our counselors. They've been connecting with students. They've been meeting with them on a regular basis. They've also done their own surveys to students just to touch base and find out how they're doing. They've also shared relaxation techniques, breathing techniques through their Google Classrooms, because they each have Google Classrooms, and they've been sharing with them those types of resources for students. So that's already in place. In terms of the SEL screener, we're going to be doing that throughout the district, so that we can then target the supports on a more global level for scholars.
Board members, any other questions or comments on this section? Thank you, Dr. Padilla. Why don't you move on?
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ramjug and Mr. Colby for an update on capital project.
Thank you, Dr. Padilla. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a happy and healthy Thanksgiving to all. This evening, our capital plan update is going to focus on the planning, design, and development of our new Career and Tech Education Center. After months of extensive research, collaboration, and education planning has resulted in an extraordinary building design plan, which will undeniably provide our CTE students with the most effective and expansive learning opportunities, and in a number of different vocational subject areas. So this evening, our architect firm, Clark Patterson Lee, which includes Mr. Colby, Ms. Courtney Beldy and Ms. Lauren Tarzio will present the plan in detail, as it is shifting from a conceptual plan into a official construction design plan. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Amjad. So we're at a real pivotal point at this process on the CTE building, and it's actually in a very exciting phase that we're at. We've spent the last several months engaging, as many of you probably have heard and remember from our previous meetings, with user groups and ed planning sessions. So tonight is going to be a little bit of a review, but it's also going to be a little bit of more detail in terms of each program space. In a second, I'm going to have Courtney, who's our lead interior designer, go through each of these spaces with you. Courtney's been a pivotal part of our team leading these ed planning sessions. I think to date, we've done approximately 24 ed planning sessions. And we have a few more to do with the culinary portion of the program. As you can imagine, a commercial kitchen and some of the things that go along with that design is very detailed. So we'll be diving a little deeper on the culinary portion of this. But right now, we've really got this building nailed down in terms of program and spaces and square footages, and we've massaged various spaces. Most notably, the core of the building has been massaged. So that's in here in the center, which splits these two bars apart. You'll notice we have some additional breakout spaces and collaboration spaces for students. And this, the red components that you see here are vertical circulation, but a large part of the vertical circulation in the center of the building is a grand staircase. As both for function of a normal staircase, but also for the purposes of this building, the grand staircase also acts as a teaching space, collaboration space, small group instruction space. This is something that's very common at a collegiate level in high schools throughout the country, but it's very functional as well as a traditional staircase. But the core of the building here is actually not only just a corridor, if you will, but a space that's usable by students and staff. A few other things that we'll note here as we go through, you'll see that some of the industrial spaces have grown a little bit. We've had to massage the program based on feedback that we've gotten. And then on the third floor, we've been able to modify without losing square footage, but through efficiency, rotate the orientation of some classrooms and put them in a much more efficient space in terms of the structure and how they're laid out. And what that's allowed us to do is have a whole section of the third floor available for future expansion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney, who will give you a brief overview of program, which I know you kind of already know this floor by floor, and then we'll get into really a bullet list of the key points of each program space.
Thank you, Chris, very much for that introduction. Good evening, all. I'm excited to be here and have this opportunity to present, as Chris discussed, this refined design as we've been working diligently with both the district as well as faculty and staff, digging in deep with the users, as we like to say, those who are functioning in the space, teaching in the space, those who understand the curriculum best, what the student needs are, how the students learn within these programs, and the best teaching styles. So by virtue of having these in-depth sessions, we've been able to discover adjacencies, discover where maybe there were areas that needed to be revised, to look at supportive spaces, how departments interact with one another, and as this is taking shape, it's interesting to see kind of how organically some of those pieces want to fit together. And we've been able to draw upon that and kind of come up with this revised design. So as Chris mentioned, there are 3 floors overall. So What I'd like to do is just kind of walk you through each floor to reorient those of you who may not have had the opportunity to see this update. And then we'll get into some of the highlighted spaces of the program, areas where maybe the most major changes have occurred, or areas whose location and adjacency maybe has been reshaped to better support the users and the students. So within this first overall plan, one of the major changes that we have made through our research and certainly within these user group sessions is at the two main vestibules. So at the top of the page, you have your kind of main entry point and a corridor. And then just across the corridor, down at the bottom of the page, you have a secondary vestibule. There is a third vestibule off to the left, which can be utilized to shut down that wing of the school. That would support the human services component of the first floor, which would be cosmetology and barbering. That allows for students to take on, clients, right? So it can start to and want to act as a real-time salon where folks in the community can make appointments and they can come in, potential to have it be opened in the evenings and on weekends. So in thinking about how these spaces will not only be areas where students will be taught, but also used by the community, we felt it was also important to introduce security measures. So at the three corridors that I've just mentioned, we have added security stations so that anyone who's coming into the building to utilize some of these services, to participate within the school, has to go through a security checkpoint to keep the staff and the students safe and healthy. We also, as Chris had mentioned, have moved this sort of central stair, which has helped us kind of shrink these circulation spaces. So what you're seeing in gray is what we would refer to as circulation. It's the corridors. By virtue of shrinking that footprint, we have not expanded the building, but we've been able to provide the departments with more usable square footage. So that was kind of an exciting redesign that was part of this development. So Chris, if you could go to the next slide, please. On the second level, again, you can see that kind of central stair. What we've done on the second level is started to, as well as the first level, we've started to kind of stipple in administrative and faculty support spaces. The students are obviously there to learn, and we want this school to best support the curriculum and the teaching, but that also means supporting the faculty and staff. So we are on all levels providing faculty facilities. On the first floor, there is an administrative wing. And then as we'll see on the third floor, there is additional staff supportive spaces like a staff lounge, small meeting spaces as well. So those would be some sort of major changes to this second level. And then if you'll go to the next floor. And on the third level, this is a major change and something that we were really excited about. So again, to Chris's point, we've been able to take all of the classrooms, shift them to the right of the building footprint, reorient the classroom itself, which means we really didn't lose square footage, but what we were able to do is provide an opportunity for there to be future expansion. So the intention would be to build out the second level roof, which would act as a third level floor for future expansion of any of the programs, maybe even programs that are being discovered. There's also opportunity for the rooftop spaces to support the potential for a rooftop garden, something that could support the cafe and culinary department. So we're looking at ways to better utilize all of these spaces for teaching and learning and hands-on demonstration. So if we go to the next slide. So here is kind of an enlarged plan overview, that main entry vestibule that we had seen on the first floor. This is where we, again, have invited the opportunity to expand administration by shifting that main stair, bringing that to be a central focal point and providing these supportive spaces for administration. We have security, we have a storage vault, which is required by SED to provide front office space that can be utilized, for student check-in, parent-teacher meetings. That also acts as a support area for a resource room. We understood in some of the meetings that we had that students come in and get help with writing cover letters and resumes and researching, additional programs in the area. It's also an opportunity for other kind of supporting community items within the area to come in. Maybe it's schools that the district works with or has a relationship with. There's an administrative area where we are providing touchdown stations. So faculty or staff can come in, have a quick meeting. There's storage, there's supportive areas like printers and fax, as well as a large conference room, and then a few private offices, again, to support the director of the school. So if you will go to the next slide. Here is another major change. We had a great 2 sessions with the industrial arts program over the course of several hours. So what we were able to do, and also through some visits to sort of similar facilities in the area, again, recognizing the needs of how these classes are being taught, the number of bays that were required to support this growing program, offering some opportunities for shared space. We heard from the users that welding and auto body may utilize one another, or auto tech and welding may utilize one another. So we want to create this kind of cohesive, interactive space by providing the opportunity to open up these spaces to one another, as well, again, as these supportive areas, having within industrial arts, rooms that get quite messy, right? Paint and grease and tools, that this kind of operates in and of itself with changing areas and locker rooms and offices. Again, there's a waiting room and an office service area so the community can utilize these programs. So really kind of to think about this in a holistic way that supports the community as well as the students. So this was a great change. The users were very excited about the overall expansion of the footprint, so we could really fit in all these parts and pieces. So next slide would be the health sciences. Again, a major program within this school. We are actually continuing to work with the nursing department on refining these spaces. This is a program that has a great relationship with New York State for testing and certification. So you'll see all sorts of notes all over this. This is a working document as we're starting to get down to the definition of how teaching is happening in these spaces, how testing is happening in these spaces, the requirements for that testing, that also, then ensuring that SED requirements are being made available. So we have, again, this is kind of a work in progress, but this again is a program that has expanded quite a bit from the beginning. The users have been wonderful in giving us feedback. We've also been able to add a health office. If you can see kind of grayed out to the right, with everything going on, this being a school where, students are coming and going, we also have a lot of activity going on. We understand that the nursing program must be independent of a health office, that is not something that has any type of crossover. So we wanted to provide a facility that's right off of the main entrance. Were a student to come into school feeling, any type of symptom, they could easily get to this health office without traversing throughout the rest of the school. They could be contained there, and then they could be contacted, and left with their family. So this again is another kind of supportive area that we looked to include into the program that wasn't originally there. Next slide, please. And then also, as I had mentioned before, human services, the barbering and cosmetology, again, an ever-growing program. We've expanded the footprint here, worked with the users to better understand the types of equipment that they need, the layout, how they're teaching, being able, as I had mentioned, to kind of lock this wing down. So having a vestibule entrance off of a major parking area with security in place, this is something that then can be utilized on the weekends and in the evenings by the students and the community. So they've got kind of their own enclosed space within the school. Next slide, please. On level 2, health and sciences, we shifted this department. A lot of it originally was on the first floor. We brought it up to the second floor. We felt it was an opportunity for it to kind of, again, have its own wing by bringing these classrooms together. And this allowed for us to create what we're hoping, will be this beautiful kind of end corridor wing health and foundational fitness lab. We are all aware of the benefits of natural lighting and exterior line of sight. To have a health and foundational fitness lab utilize those items is a wonderful benefit. And again, this supports all of the curriculum that would be happening in those classrooms, that this lab would then be able to be used by those that faculty and staff. So next slide, please. Fine arts and technology. The bulk of fine arts and technology does exist on the third floor. The fashion department we have placed on the second floor. Again, it's a growing program, and it also is a program that requires kind of multiple areas for sewing, teaching, staging, almost performance of type. So this again was something that was reshaped with the added benefit of all of those user group meetings. And what we've been able to accommodate here is not only this lab space and teaching space, but the proximity to the exhibition area, where there is a great opportunity for that to be used as a runway, a great opportunity for that to house, maybe it's an end of semester fashion show, have mannequins placed in, prominent areas throughout the school at this window, even in some of these breakout spaces. So this made sense to kind of expand the footprint of this and provide that adjacency. So if we go to the third floor, this is the remaining part of fine arts and technology. As I had mentioned, all of this exists on the third floor. Again, it's sort of like its own wing, but this was, again, how these puzzle pieces started to come into play, provided us with usable space for a staff lounge, faculty facilities, as well as what we would refer to as kind of phone booth rooms, recognizing that teachers have the need to have a private phone call. Teachers are people, right, with families and lives, and this is a place where one could go and take a quick private meeting, and we've kind of again stippled those throughout the school themselves to help benefit and support faculty and staff. We also have involved at this point MEP and structure. So as you'll see in this plan in particular, we are starting to block out large areas for control rooms, mechanical, crawl spaces, shaft spaces. Those are the things that we will need to support all of this technology, all of this equipment. So that was something that prior to this development was known, but there hadn't been dedicated spaces. So that was, again, something that sort of allowed for us to shift these puzzle pieces into place. And if you look in the corridor here, excuse me, there's also, again, we have these kind of breakout spaces. These are opportunities for students to get up from the table, teachers to get up from the table and start to collaborate. It provides multiple uses to the space. It could be a gallery. It could be a touchdown area. It could be a presentation. So providing these kind of multi-function, multi-use spaces is something that's really that future forward 21st century way of learning. And so we have provided these throughout the school as well. If we go to the last slide, this is just the second half of that third floor, again, to support fine arts and technology. As you'll see, computer science lab, again, it's a program that is growing. So what we're looking to do is provide a large enough room that can be broken up into two. so that that again accommodates the high level of enrollment, so that this program can continue to grow legs. So I believe that that is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much, Madam President. We would like to open it up to any questions from the board.
Board members, questions or comments? I don't see any hands, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Madam President. That concludes my items for this evening.
Thank you. We're going to move on to public comments on agenda items. Mr. McCoy?
There is no public comment on agenda or non-agenda items, Madam President.
Thank you. We're going to move on to my section. For your consideration, I have items 5.1 through 5.7 under consent. Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I would like to entertain a motion, please.
So
moved. Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker, Mr. Walker, Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
I also have item 5.8, which is a resolution to congratulate Dr. Roberto Padilla, 2021 New York State Superintendent of the Year. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Abstain.
Mr. Walker, Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items. Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand.
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to make that motion if it's possible at this point.
I'm muted, I'm sorry. Can you state that motion clearly and very, use specifics, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to extend the choice of work from home for the staff as outlined by Dr. Padilla to January 16th, 2021.
I have a motion. I need to have a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Questions or discussion?
Madam President, this is now to add it to the agenda, then there'll be a vote upon the motion.
Yes, sir. So we need to have, this is to add. Okay. Any questions to add? Roll call to add, please.
Ms. Maida,
I have to abstain because I'm not really clear on what.
Ms.
Why-
Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker, Ms. Burton,
No.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Mr. Howard, you're muted.
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
No.
1, 2, 3. That's 5 yeses, ma'am.
Okay, so now we have, so I need to entertain a motion to put this on the floor. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mrs. Maida, do you have a question about this? Maybe Mr. Stradine
well,
can.
I'm not sure. I think more discussion has to be given from everyone to even entertain this, because it seems confusing to me that because that decision was already made and it will be analyzed as time goes on. So why would that be for us to do? I'm not sure.
Thank you. Mr. Howard, you have your hand up.
Yes, Madam President, I was going to say the same thing that Ms. Maida just said. I thought that it was going to be monitored by the superintendent, and if the metrics or information came available, that he would make a decision at that point in time, if that's what he's talking about. I was under the understanding that Dr. Padilla said that he would make that based on the information available. I could be wrong. Please, I stand to be corrected.
Mrs. Santiago.
You're correct. I plan to monitor, collaborate with the Department of Health, as I have indicated in the presentation. I hope this doesn't happen, but if we go into the orange or red, then that will trigger a different set of decisions. But, my 2 cents, I just want to caution the board. I mean, where does it stop? Are we going to call snow days after this? I just think, I think I've been pretty clear, and I have an open line of communication with my union leaders. This is something that will be monitored and determined throughout. I think that's the best approach to move forward.
Mr. Howard, your hand is still up. Do you have another question?
No, I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Levinstein.
Well, so I would like to leave these decisions in the hands of the team that has all the data, speaks with the health department and with county legislators. I don't think that we have the decision as a board to create this, to order one way or the other.
Any other questions or comments on this item on the floor? Mrs. Santiago.
Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't going to, I took my hand away before because everybody was saying exactly what I was thinking. So I'm just going to chime in and repeat the same thing. I agree. I think throughout, the whole summer and before the start of school and so forth, we've been kept abreast of the planning, the thinking. I understood that Dr. Padilla has been in contact and communicating with the unions and so forth. So I'm sure and confident that, we'll be hearing from him and getting the best recommendations after discussions with everyone. And I agree with everyone else. Thank you.
Mr. Stradine.
Thank you, Madam President. Basically, the reason why I brought the motion forward is because seeing the numbers that we're seeing as a board for quarantines explode in the last week and a half, we have to, as a board, see these trends. And if we, as a board, determine that the direction of the operation of the schools is not going in a way that's either safe or efficient, we can at least put our 2 cents in and try to guide it in the way that we see fit. If we see something that's disturbing or in a situation that we don't want it to go, that's what this is. It's up to everyone where they vote. That's fine, but I see this as a situation that's exploding because the public is not aware of all the information that we are, and it's up to us as a board to see that data and to make these type of decisions.
Mrs. Burton, you have yourself unmuted. Do you have a comment?
No.
Okay. I have a comment, and I know this is not only about the staff that's right now working with the kids, but it's also about the substitutes and the number of substitutes that we need to maintain safety and security in our schools. I think that to me is of great concern. So I think all of this needs to be looked at when we look at numbers and having remote situations for staff and students. Any other questions or comments on this item? Mr. Shaw, do you have something you need to say? No? Okay.
No, I don't.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
No.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
No.
Ms. Burton,
No.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
No.
Mr. Levinstein,
No.
Ms. Maida.
No.
Motion fails, ma'am.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Forget.
Thank you, Madam President. One item this evening, it's a resolution to amend the shared decision-making plan for the Newburgh Enlarged City School District for the 2020-2021 school year.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So move.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. The shared decision-making plan, does that require that every school have a school leadership team or some kind of a group that meets at the school to make decisions with the district?
There's a school leadership team for a very specific purpose, and it's very clearly outlined in the plan. So yes, each building has a school leadership team, but it's for school improvement planning purposes, as it is defined in the plan, in the shared decision-making plan.
And did the school leadership teams at every school have a part in this document?
The document is created by a steering committee as outlined in the top paragraph of the plan. There's representation from the bargaining units, the Board of Education, a parent and a community member, as well as the central office senior staff. So the shared decision-making plan for the district that guides planning across the schools is the document that you're reviewing right now. It's the framework for the way shared decision-making should operate within the school district.
So I think what Mr. Forget is saying, and I'm going to paraphrase you, Mr. Forget, this is the overreaching document. This is not the schools, each individual school document, correct?
That's correct, Madam President.
Does that help, Mr. Stridiron?
I understand. I don't know for sure that every single school has a school leadership team. I've been told that they don't, but I don't believe everything I hear. So that's why I'm asking the administration if that is true. So as far as his knowledge is that there is a school leadership team at every school.
At this point in time, in every building, there's a school leadership team. Some are fully staffed and some are not.
Mrs. Burton, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So in response to the overarching team that includes a parent, is it one parent? And that's one question. And then another question is, over the course of the 12 schools, what's the procedure for identifying a parent for that overarching group?
So the shared decision-making plan itself has a parent representative on it that helps to guide the framework for the overarching umbrella of the shared decision-making plan. That's part of New York State regulations. In each building, teachers are placed upon their teams, depending upon what the specific plan you're talking about. The head delegate of the NTA puts teachers on. The shop steward for CSEA places CSEA representatives on, and the building administrator and the assistant principal participate, again, depending upon which specific plan you're talking about, because there are a variety of different plans that are covered under the shared decision-making plan that you're looking at this evening. And the purpose of this evening's conversation really is around one modification or amendment to a plan that you already approved over the course of the summer. The specific amendment we're talking about tonight is to change the makeup and design of the strategic planning teams. In the past, we were monitoring the implementation of strategic planning. Now we have a new plan that also needs to be monitored. So there's a shift in the way we're doing it, and that's the specific resolution you see this evening. It's to change the language of the teams that are focusing on strategic planning.
Mr. Howard, I see your hand.
Yes, Madam President. So Mr. Forge, I need a little clarification. So Mr. Stridiron, when he asked you, were there teams in all buildings, and your response was, some are fully staffed and some are not. Can you explain what that means, please?
Yep, there are school leadership teams, and the school leadership teams do the school improvement work within the school. So our TSI and CSI schools, I'll use those as an example. They have teams that work on the creation of the school comprehensive education plan, such as the plan that you saw South Middle School present and Vales Gate School present. There are teachers, there are administrators, and there are parents on those teams that help to develop the plan under the leadership of the school administrators. We do have one school that right now does not have all the teacher members on it.
So that could be the building that Mr. Stridiron is referring to.
I don't know what Mr. Stridiron's referring to. I just know that there is one building that doesn't have all the teacher representatives.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, let me just note that the Board of Ed approves the members of the teams. And that resolution has already come before you.
Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand.
Thank you. So are the members of the SLT teams paid, and where does the funds for the payment come from?
I'll speak to last year. Last year, the schools that are in good standing, we allocated a certain amount of money for the school leadership teams to participate. The payment for certain individuals is contractual, so it's based on the agreement of the bargaining unit. So the general fund pays the schools that were in good standing. Depending upon the amount of money a school allocates for each of the TSIs and CSI schools, the funding in those schools is used to pay teachers beyond the school day for anything over and above the work that they do as a classroom teacher.
Mrs. Santiago, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to ask, so who monitors, and forgive me if you mentioned this before, but who monitors the minutes? Do the school leadership teams and the shared decision-making teams, do they have to submit their minutes, and is that monitored anywhere?
Yes, that's monitored in our office. The agendas for each of the meetings and the minutes from the meetings and the work that's accomplished at those meetings is submitted with the timesheets for payment. And it's kept because we use federal funds to compensate them.
Mr. Howard, I see your hand.
Madam President, I didn't lower it.
Any more questions on this item? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mrs. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my one item.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Elementary, Mrs. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam President. Elementary curriculum instruction presents 2 items on the consent agenda for your consideration this evening.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on these items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Moriarty. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services, Dr. Roman.
Thank you, Madam President. We have one item under the Student Supports Services agenda for your consideration, and that is recommendations from CSE, CPSE committees.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Dr. Roman. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Dr. Spindler.
Thank you, Madam President. Finance has items 9.1 through 9.3 for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker. Yes, Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Spindler. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 10.1 through 10.4 for your consideration on tonight.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on these items? Mr. Levinstein?
Yes, please, Madam President. I just have asking for some clarification on, we have approved coaching appointments and there's one on for tonight. So my question is, two questions. So how does the pause in the sports till January affect the students, the coaches, and the stipends for these appointments? And then my second question is there any reason that there hasn't been any appointments for any of the performing arts, after-school performing arts programs?
So for the coaching, the stipends, if there is a pause in the sport prior to it beginning, as far as the practice prior to the actual sport, engaging in the sport, then we take a look at the the actual stipended amount over the remainder of that particular period. For the performing arts stipends, I really don't have an answer for that particular piece, because whenever these positions, Schedule J positions, are communicated to HR, then that's when we actually post for the position. And then, of course, people are appointed to the position. Until then, there is, there needs to be communication between the building and also the superintendent to determine whether we are going to move forward with any Schedule J positions.
Yeah.
Mr. Bayer, hang on a second. Mr. Bayer has his hand up. Let's see if he has an answer for you, Mr. Levenstein.
This is Keach, who's our director of Fine and Performing Arts. We've been talking throughout the fall. It's logistically difficult, if not impossible, to have performing arts at this point, given the limited number of students who are coming in, as well as trying to maintain the requirements of the Department of Health guidelines, as well as the SED. We've talked about it. We're talking about how that would look in the future. I know that there's also sometimes conversations of how you could do this virtually. We cannot do performing arts virtually. We do not have the technology to do so. And I think if you just witness our board meetings sometimes, trying to get us all on the same page, and how when you have different bandwidth coming from different places, trying to then imagine that as a performing arts, where you're trying to get instruments or voices to sing collectively, we just don't have that kind of technology. It does not exist, and it's very expensive. So she's monitoring it. There are not other districts that we're aware of. Some have done band outside in the spring, but then they were interrupted. So we're not alone on this. We're being very careful, given the circumstances we're under.
Well, okay, so I understand some of what you're saying. I can't see how you can plan to play sports and then say that a virtual singing or performance is dangerous to the students. I've seen some virtual performances and practice, and that can be done. So I'm hoping that we just go forward with that we get plans from the teachers that we can put forward to C&I to go to create this. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Santiago, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with Mr. Levenstein. I don't see why we couldn't do something with performing arts to truly let our students to attest to a challenge I'm sure that they would readily accept. But on the other side note, can you, I'd like to understand the coaching stipend portion a little better. I didn't fully understand what exactly happens now that we go on pause. Can you just repeat that or just clarify it for me? Thank you.
I only heard bits and pieces of what you said. So if someone could repeat that, I would greatly appreciate it.
Mrs. Santiago, try your question again, please. Your mic was very bad.
Sure, sorry about that. Can you hear me better? I didn't fully understand what happens to the stipends for coaching when we go on pause. Can you please repeat that or clarify that? Thank you.
So if the season starts later, if there's a pause for the start of the season for several weeks, what we then do is that we look at the total stipend and review it for the remaining weeks of that particular season.
Then what happens?
Then we issue payment.
Mr. McLemore, is the payment prorated?
Yes, Madam President.
I think that's what Mrs. Santiago was getting to.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody, any other questions on HR? Hi, Mr. Walker, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to say that I agree with Mr. Levinson as well. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Beneo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton.
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. We're going to move on to the clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Good evening, Madam President. I have one item. That's the approval of the minute from November 10th, 2020.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Beneo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
Madam President and members of the board, I just want to wish you happy Thanksgiving, and that concludes my agenda items.
Thank you. And we have no, what do you call it? Non-agenda items for public comment. So I also would like to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. And I want to give a big shout out to Mrs. Caitlin Lazarski and the members of her food service team and everybody else, the outside crew, everybody that helps. I saw principals, I saw other people out there helping, giving out food this week. It is a massive, massive and wonderful, wonderful thing that they're doing. So thank you all. Have a happy Thanksgiving. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll
Thank you.
call, clerk.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Beneo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes, and thank you and happy Thanksgiving.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes, and happy Thanksgiving to you all, and let's remember the season. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank
Happy
you, everybody.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.